Hey students. Let me go back. All right. This is standard 3.5. This is the first video. It's going to be walking you through some of your notes. So, we're talking about characteristics of pregnancy. So, the goal for you today by the end of this standard is for you to be able to explain the characteristics of pregnancy. So, the essential question, you're going to write that on page 41 of your packet. It's right here. 3.5 essential question is, why is it so important for a female to see a doctor throughout pregnancy? So, go ahead, pause this video, write down that essential question, and then come back to me when you're on page 39, ready to go. All right. Okay. Welcome back. We're going to start today by talking about two different concepts, two different words. Sometimes students get these mixed up, so we're going to talk about the difference between them. They are very different. We're going to talk about ovulation, and we're going to talk about conception. So ovulation happens when the eggs or ovum are released from the ovaries to begin the menstrual cycle. Okay, so ovulation, OV, is when ovum, also starts with OV, are released from the ovaries. So that's ovulation. Then conception is what's happening in this picture. Woo! Okay, so conception is when the egg and the sperm meet. That's conception. Sometimes it's called fertilization. Okay, either one works. That's what it's called. So you need to know that only one sperm may penetrate and fertilize an ovum. So as you see in this picture, there's only one sperm right here that's fertilizing this ovum. All these other sperm are going to get locked out because they didn't make it. Okay, so that's what happens. So once the sperm fertilizes the ovum, it's now called a zygote. That's going to be a word that's going to mean a lot more to you next lesson. But our fertilized ovum implants into the endometrium lining within the uterus. That's what happens. Okay, so ovulation is the ovaries releasing ovum. Conception is the sperm fertilizing the ovum. Okay, and those two things meeting. All right. Okay, so, skipping ahead. Not meaning to. The menstrual cycle. Couple things you need to know. I know that I didn't put a spot in your notes for this, but I wanted to address a couple things and kind of teach you some things, because there are some common questions that I get asked after teaching this class for 4 years. This is my 4th year teaching at least 4 sections of this class every semester. I have some common questions that I get asked. So I'm going to explain some things that will hopefully clear up some of those questions in case you have them. Yes, this is going to be important for everyone to know. Okay? So, when we talk about the menstrual cycle usually starts, we say day 1 is usually the first day the female starts bleeding. Mostly we call that day 1 because that's the day that we can track. Females know when that happens. Okay? Usually menstruation, or that bleeding, female's period, lasts for about 4 to 7 days. Okay? On my chart here, it goes for 5 days. That's pretty typical. Anywhere between 4 to 7 days is pretty normal. So that lasts for, that's the uterine lining, the endometrium lining getting broken down, and the body getting rid of it because there's no fertilized egg. Okay? So then after that, the uterine lining, the endometrium lining, starts thickening again because it's preparing for a new egg, right? So that's what it's doing here in this blue section. And then somewhere in this yellow section, ovulation occurs. Now, ovulation actually only occurs on one day. So you might be looking at this like, why are there like 8 different days? That's because ovulation shifts, okay? Things like hormones, sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress can affect when ovulation happens. So, sometimes it might happen right here in the middle, day 14. Sometimes it might happen earlier. Sometimes it might happen later. Just kind of depends, okay? Most females do not know when they are ovulating. There are not a lot of signs that will tell a female that she's ovulating. So, some females might get a little bit of back pain or things like that happening, but for most females, they have no idea. So, then after ovulation occurs, so the ovaries release the egg, and it's making its way through the fallopian tube, the uterine lining continues to thicken because if the egg is fertilized, it implants in the endometrium lining, and the endometrium lining is preparing for that. Now, a couple questions that I get asked. So we'll go back maybe, and we're gonna maybe, nope, okay. So, couple questions that I get asked. Sorry, I'm like playing around with my pen, trying to see what works and what doesn't. So, sometimes I get asked, how does a female know if she could get pregnant? The answer is, at any point on the female cycle, she could potentially get pregnant. Now, you might be like, what? Okay. Stay with me. So, around ovulation is the most likely time that a female will get pregnant. So, we just talked about infertility. So, couples who are struggling with infertility, one of the first things a lot of them will do is they'll go to a store and they'll get what's called an ovulation kit. They're kind of like pregnancy tests, but they are testing for the hormone that causes ovulation to happen. So they can predict when ovulation is going to happen so that a couple who is trying to have a baby will know when that's happening, so they have the highest chance of having a kid, right? So that being said, ovulation is the highest chance of people having a child, but it could happen here, it could happen over here, and here's the reason why. Sometimes I get asked, hey, if I have sex while I'm on my period, or if a female has sex while she's on her period, could she get pregnant? Now, the answer is yes, she could. But it's also not as likely, okay? So let me explain why. If a female is having sex on her period, somewhere in here, right? Remember, sperm can live in the body for up to 5 days. So if it's happening, so if ovulation happens early here, she could potentially get pregnant because sperm can live in the body for up to 5 days. Now, is it super likely? No, but there is a chance. Same thing if she's having sex later, right? Because if ovulation happens later, right? So usually, right? So if she's having sex later, she could potentially still have it, depending on when ovulation happens. So ovulation does not always happen on a set day. Sometimes people used to think that it always happened on day 14, but that's not true. Okay. So some months it might happen earlier. Some months it might happen on day 14. Right here is a 28-day cycle. That's the common cycle, but anywhere between 24 to about 36 days is pretty normal for a female's cycle. So also depending on that means that some of the phases are longer, right? So there might be more time before the female ovulates or vice versa. Okay, so hopefully that answered some questions. If you still have questions, please fill out the question form that's linked right underneath this video, because I will go through and I will answer some of those questions. I will answer them, like, I won't tell people that you're the one that asked, right? But some of them I can answer anonymously, or answer in front of the whole class. So you just tell me what you would prefer. So if you have other questions that pertains to any of those things, please let me know, because I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to pause this video here. We'll end this one here, and then we'll pick up in our next video with your notes.